What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Yarns with Marns. It's been my first episode in a while. I'd say maybe 10 or 11 months. I think the last time I put out an episode was back in January or February, and today is December 1st. And I think in that episode I talked a bit about what I wanted to do with the podcast, kind of my plans and my ideas I had for the year. I did that podcast and then I never put any out after that. And I've had lots of questions throughout the year, like when is your podcast coming back? I miss listening to it. When are there going to be some new episodes? I've been a guest on a lot of episodes since then, so I'm going to upload them to my YouTube and my Spotify and Apple Podcast account, so you can listen to those. But I'm really excited to start this podcast back up again. It's kind of the revamped version of Yarns with Marns, and it's going to be a lot of podcasts like this, just one-on-one. I'll get into kind of my motivation and my inspirations for revamping this podcast in a sec, but this podcast is going to be a bit more of myself, and also still going to have guests on. I know I've only had one guest or two guests so far on this podcast, but I'm going to start doing them more frequently. I think where I went wrong last time was I didn't really have a schedule, I didn't have a plan, I didn't have kind of some consistency with putting out podcasts. I might put out one a week for maybe a month, and then I wouldn't put one out for a month or something like that. So back onto my inspirations and my motivations for starting this podcast back up. One of my big inspos, and he's the reason kind of why I've got this kind of set up too, but I'm sure he won't mind. They say that imitation is flattering. I think that's the saying. But Heinz is a guy. Hindsight is his podcast. His name's Heinz, and he's always the guy when people ask me what podcast would you recommend, who should I listen to, he's always the first person I'd recommend. So when you're finished listening to this or watching this, go and subscribe to his podcast too. Hindsight. I can't guarantee anything, but he has genuinely made my life better and made my life more peaceful just by kind of some of his podcasts. And so this whole setup is actually kind of like his. I'm drinking some tea right here. I don't know the exact flavor, but it's herbal tea. It was gifted to me. It's from Aesop. It comes in an Aesop bag, so I don't know the exact flavor. It was gifted to me by my friend Dion, so thank you, Dion. And it's loose leaf tea, and that's what Heinz drinks. And I never used to drink loose leaf tea. I didn't even know what it was until I started listening to Heinz. And if you watch his podcast and you listen to him, that's what he drinks. He drinks loose leaf tea, and it's kind of vibey, and he always makes a glass or a cup for his listeners as well, and he puts it at the front of the desk, and they can drink the tea while they listen to him. So I thought that was a vibe. He's kind of just a vibe in general. That's his kind of word he uses as well, a vibe ting. And he's definitely my biggest inspo for starting this podcast up again. And I don't know if he ever has, but the podcasts that I've listened to of his, he's never had any guests on, or I've never listened to ones with any guests on. And when I first started this podcast last year, I think it was about 14 months ago, I started this podcast back in September last year, 2020. My idea and my plans and ambitions for this was to get lots of guests on and get people to share their stories, and that definitely still is part of the plan and part of my ideas for this podcast. But I really want to do a lot of individual and solo podcasts like Heinz. So I think, I'm not even sure how he plans it, but he does daily podcast. I'm not going to do daily podcasts, but I'm going to do a podcast every week, and I'm going to, even if one week I'm feeling unmotivated, I might pre-record some and then drip feed them out. But I'm definitely going to get more consistent, and it's not even just going to be one a week. Some weeks there might be multiple, but there's going to be a podcast every week, and you can hold me accountable to that. If I don't put out a podcast, but I'm going to, if I don't, message me, tell me, ask me where's the podcast, because that's where I went wrong last time. I was inconsistent. I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have structure. But back to Heinz. So he does these little one-on-one podcasts, and I'm just assuming because this is kind of the vibe I get of him. He writes down some thoughts or some situations from the day or from the week, and then he talks about them. And I've honestly been getting lots of thoughts lately. I walked home from work the other day, and I put a podcast and I listened to a bit of Gary Vee, and listening to podcasts gets me creative. So you might be getting creative right now listening to this. And so listening to that podcast gave me lots of ideas. So I wrote them down in my notes on my phone, and I can turn those into episodes, because a lot of Heinz ones, they're not very long. They're kind of, maybe some of them would be 15 minutes max. So I'm really gonna try to I'm going to do podcasts that kind of format. So shorter forms, just kind of maybe sharing my daily thoughts, and maybe I might experience something through the day, and there might be a learning lesson in it, and it might be a learning lesson for me, which I could then share with you guys. So that's kind of what a lot of this podcast is going to be about. It's going to be these sit downs with me. I'm going to have my diary here. I'm going to have notes, just because I might write down an experience. I'm not even going to read the notes too much. If you're watching the video form right now, I haven't even really read anything off. It's kind of just there as a bit of a guide, but this is kind of what it's going to be like. It's going to be, I guess it's going to be a lot like Heinz, but with a New Zealand accent, and yeah, not Jamaican, but he's a big inspo, and yeah, that's kind of what to expect from this podcast. I'm definitely still gonna get guests on. I've got 2 microphones, and I heard a quote once from Kobe Bryant, one of my idols, one of my biggest idols, my favorite athlete of all time, and he said that storytelling is kind of what makes the world go around. Storytelling is what makes the world go around, because, you know, telling stories, passing it on to generations. I'm sure as little kids we all enjoyed sitting down with our parents and sitting down with our grandparents and listening to stories of their childhood and stuff like that. So I really love listening to stories. I love listening to podcasts, and so I'm definitely still going to get guests on. I do have regrets about not doing this podcast during the basketball season, so I could get some of my Saints teammates on, but you know, with the day and age we live in right now, we have social media and we have things like Zoom, where I can still get guests on from abroad, and also get guests on physically. So definitely going to get guests on, but I think a lot of the content on here will be one-on-one with me, kind of just chilling with you guys and letting you guys know my thoughts, letting you guys know, letting you in on some free game, sharing some of my knowledge that I know, some of my wisdom, some teachings. It might be about general life, health and well-being, spirituality, basketball, all the kind of things that I'm interested in. Herbal tea. This tea is nice too, and this is my sister's keep cup as well. I like the kind of the clear vibe. I feel like the Māori Heinz, drinking my tea with my notepad and doing these one-on-one podcasts. But yeah, that's a little bit about what to expect from. That's a little bit about what to expect from me and what to expect from this podcast. I appreciate you guys for being patient and understanding with me. I know there's honestly so many people that have messaged saying, like, when's the podcast coming back? When are you going to do another episode? And I always say it's coming back soon. I even put a post up on, it was like International Podcast Day. I think it was back in September. And I said, you know, stay tuned because the podcast is coming back soon. And today is December, so I can't complain. I can't take back those times, but what I can do is focus on the now, and right now the podcast is back. So I'm really looking forward to sharing a lot of my thoughts and my ideas with you. I've got a nice little setup here, my little temporary podcast station. If you're watching the video format again, I need to get some artwork or something for the back. But yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to doing this, because if you know me personally, you know I love to talk. I'm a talker, I'm a rambler, I'm not shy, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to just kind of vibing with you guys and sharing some of my knowledge and some of my thoughts, and then also helping you guys out with whatever you need. I'm still going to do things like Q&As. I put some story boxes up on my story and ask you guys to ask me some questions, so looking forward to doing that. I'm also going to get some guests on to share their stories and share their life and values and wisdom that they've learned, because as Kobe said, storytelling is what makes the world go around. So thank you for listening to another episode of Yarns with Marns. I should have done this at the start, but if you are new here, my name is Rangi Marie. My nickname is Mani. It was given to me by myself when I was younger. I couldn't say my own name, and so Mani is my nickname, but a lot of people call me Marns, and to be honest, I love the nickname Marns. Like, I love it when people call me Marns. My coach this year, towards the end of the season, he started calling me Marns, and then I thought about it, and I thought, well, actually, I like being called Marns, like sometimes more than Mani. So if you made it this far, You can call me Marns, you can call me Mani, you can call me Rangimarie. Rangimarie is my preference because that's my real name, and it's an indigenous name, it's a Māori name, so I'm proud of my name. But as I said, I'm a rambler, and I'm rambling right now, so I'm going to finish this podcast off right now. If you are new here and you don't know much about me, my very first episode, if you scroll back and listen to it, it is a bit of a introductory podcast about myself, so go back and listen to that so you can learn some more about me. I think it's from September last year, so you might have to go back a bit. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys more. You're going to see my face a lot more. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Yarns with Marns, and I'll see you guys really soon in the next episode. Peace and love.